Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Mass Segment. Here we will feature the newest topic that being talked about in the business world. Today, we will have the discussion on innovative approaches to inclusivity. What do you mean by inclusivity and how the business organizations deal with it, especially this time of crisis? This crisis really brought a big challenge to us in our work. Despite the challenges, we learned to maximize the use of technology. Okay, without further ado, help me to welcome our speaker. He is the Global Chief People Officer of Coca-Cola Bottling Investment Group. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sir Drew Fernandez. Hi, Sir Drew. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Very nice to be here. Thank you, Bonn.
Sir Drew, are you working from home? Ang setup niyo po
Yes,
ngayon?
it looks like a green screen, but I'm actually in my home office.
Okay.
At Coca-Cola, we're actually doing flexible working arrangements. So you don't necessarily need to be in the office to be able to work. So currently I'm at home. Yes.
Okay. Same with me, I'm working at home, but once a week, I reported sa office namin, nire-required kami ng boss namin. So, our focus for today is innovative approaches to inclusivity, Sir Drew. My first question is, can you tell us what is diversity and inclusion and how important it is in a workplace?
Oh, thank you for inviting me and thank you for assigning me this topic because this is something very close to my heart. Siguro, before I explain what diversity and inclusion means, there's a saying actually that I really like that kind of explains what diversity and inclusion is. The saying goes, diversity is about it's like being invited to a party. Inclusiveness is like being invited to dance, and belonging it's like dancing like no one's watching. So for me, diversity and inclusion has four pillars. The first one is diversity, which everyone knows. It's a fact. It's really the difference from one individual to another. Woman, man, religion, age, gender, sexuality, or even just sheer interest. You know, I like country music, but I like pop music. So that's diversity. We're all different. The second pillar is what we call equity. You know, with that difference, sometimes you want to make sure that you are able to redistribute power and you're able to drive fairness, right? And by doing this, you're giving everyone equal opportunity to be able to thrive. The third pillar for me is inclusion. You know, with diversity, when everyone is different, sometimes leaders really need to take action and show the commitment to really remove that unconscious bias so that we can work together as one community and really amplify that difference and diversity is actually very important. And finally, belongingness. It's really creating a culture and community that everyone is allowed to be authentic and be themselves. This is so critical now because as we move into the new normal, be honest, you know, as you work remotely, you get in touch with the global community. You know, it's quite difficult to be able to interact with countries, with people from different countries, from people from different continents, etc. And diversity and inclusion is becoming a very important requirement for all leaders and companies moving.
Thank you, Sir Drew, for giving us a clear notion about diversity and inclusion. My next question is, can you please share with us some programs and approaches, of course, to inclusivity?
All right, sure. In Coca-Cola, we've done quite a lot. And we've done, you know, the typical stuff that other companies would do when it comes to diversity and inclusion. But in Coca-Cola, we try to take one step further. And what we said is that we want to change the narrative. And this is the reason why we introduce what we call Life at Coke Employee Experience Wheel. And in this concept, it's really bringing in the importance of the humanity of every individual in our company. And it's not just, you know, it's either you're man or woman, right? Or your sexual orientation or because of your religion. We are celebrating the person as a human being. And every human being is different and they have their values, their aspirations, their desires. And it's a game-changing narrative that we have introduced because we're now talking about what type of what do our associates want? They all want to feel well, feel inspired, feel valued, feel developed, and so on and so forth. And one of the pillars actually in our Life at Coke Employee Experience Wheel is called Be Valued. And I just want to read through what it says. We are at our best when we can be ourselves at work. It gives us a sense of belonging, share our perspectives, and build upon our trust. So for me, that's so critical for people to realize that we are valuing the individuality of every associate. That it's okay. There's no standard template of what you should be. You know, that's a typical traditional way of looking at it. If you want to be promoted, there's a template that you need to be. In Coca-Cola, we're trying to go away from that and say, hey, you are a great person. Our job is to make the best version of yourself.
Wow, that's great, Sir Drew. A follow-up question: is there
Sure.
a process we need to do in crafting a program that speaks of diversity and inclusiveness? Any practical tips, Sir Drew, that you can share with us?
Okay, this is not easy, especially for Coca-Cola Bottling Investments Group, where we operate in multiple countries across the world. And as you can imagine, depending on the culture, depending on the maturity level of the leadership in the organization, as well as labor laws and policies, etc., the situation is very different from one country to another. And I think we need to take that into consideration very clearly and importantly. It's an important step that we need to take. And this is the reason why in Coca-Cola BIG, the first thing that we did is what we call baseline. So it's really understanding where we are at our diversity and inclusion journey, realizing that certain countries, certain organizations, certain parts of the business will probably be more advanced and some will not be as advanced. And we are actually using a maturity model that is actually known to a lot of people, but it actually divides the maturity level into four phases. The first one is compliance, meaning you're just following what the law says. You know, if the Philippine government requires us to do certain policy, then you comply, right? Because at the end of the day, as responsible companies, we don't want to be doing something illegal or non-compliant to
Yeah,
what
that's
the
good.
government is requiring. The second one is programmatic, and you see this a lot. There's the DNI program, Women's Wednesdays. You know, they're doing a lot of activities that showcase that hey, there's something happening. But where we want to be is level 3 and level 4. Level 3 is leader led, meaning that this is really intertwined into the priorities of the leader. And finally, if we do that consistently, we are able to build level 4, which is an inclusive culture. So for me, baselining and really understanding where you are, no judgment. No, you don't have to be ashamed if in your company you have not started. For me, that humility and that maturity to accept where you are is the primary step for you to be able to create the right diversity and inclusion strategy relevant for your country. And it's not a walk in the park. It requires massive change management that we realized in Coke. And that's something that I also recommend for you guys who are contemplating and going through the journey.
Thank you for that, Sir Drew. My last question is, for those working remotely, because this crisis talagang malaking challenge na binigay sa atin yung face-to-face is not possible. My question is, for those working remotely, how can they establish inclusion and feel connected even if they're all apart from each other?
You know, you've raised a very important point, and a lot of people are underestimating the impact of remote working. And we're all learning, to be honest. This is the first time I'm using this platform as an example, and I'm learning. But what I realized is that remote working has also resurfaced a lot of inequity in the organization. I give you an example. Some people actually don't like working in the evening because they have to do their errands,
Yeah.
etc. But because of remote working, sometimes people don't realize that the work time has stopped and you demand your associates to go into a meeting, right? So that inequality is happening and people don't realize that. For example, some people are asked to go to a certain place for work. But because of the lack of public transportation, you know, some people, oh, I have a car, it doesn't matter. But some other people will have it will become difficult for them. So for me, my advice to every leader and into organization is to continue to try to be empathetic and authentic. um, you know, to your point, Bond, but it's easier if you're doing it face to face because you get all the emotional and visual cues. Kung
Yeah, that's
masaya ba
correct.
yung
Mm.
tao, or kung mukha ba siyang malungkot. You can see all of that, especially when you can see the body language, the facial expression, etc. In remote working, you don't see that. Sometimes naka-off pa yung video, so you don't see and read all of those cues. And therefore, it requires leaders and also colleagues and peers. You don't need to be the boss to be able to extend and be empathetic and reach out to be able to understand people, because by doing this you are able to really understand the requirements and the needs of our associates. So for me, it's the right thing to do, and it's a human thing to do, by being a good person and reaching out, especially in times like this, in a crisis. This is what people will appreciate, and this is what's expected from everyone in our community.
Thank you for that, Sir Drew. Last na lang, do you have any message to everyone on promoting diverse and inclusive workplace?
So I think my only advice is really to ensure that whatever you guys do, may it be in diversity or any people program, let's always ensure that it is people first or human centered. We always hear this people first program, we are a people first company, but it's also different from bringing that to life and ensuring that in every decision making that you do, you put your associates at center stage, right? In fact, there's a study that I really like the quote there, so I'm just going to read it out. Now is the time for leaders to reaffirm their commitment to diversity and inclusion and to reap its benefits, not just because it is likely to give them a better chance at business recovery, but also because it is the right thing to do. What I'm realizing is that diversity and inclusion and being and reaching out to our people and making them feel that it's safe to be vulnerable and be themselves is a leadership responsibility. But more than as a leadership responsibility, as human beings and as contributors to this community and as Filipinos, to be honest, it's just the right thing to do.
Thank you so much, Sir Drew, for being with us today and for having this engaging session with you regarding inclusivity. And
Salamat,
once
Bon.
again,
Maraming salamat.
maraming salamat ulit po, Sir Drew.